We are down to 4. South Carolina, Texas, UCLA, UConn descend upon Tampa this weekend, and by Sunday night we'll have a national champion. Welcome to the latest Gauer Hour. Rob Joyce, Megan Gauer, a lot to get to. We'll recap everything that happened over the weekend in Birmingham and Spokane. We'll preview the Final Four, of course, all 4 potential championship matchups, plus the portal in full swing. That was honestly maybe some of the bigger news during the games last night. Some juicy names are available. We'll hit on it all. Megan, how's life? You're going to Tampa in T-minus 24 hours?
Less than 24 hours, yeah. 7 a.m. flight tomorrow morning.
Woo! Packing?
Yeah.
Like suitcase out, just like throwing things in?
Yeah, pretty much. I am excited for the warmth, though. I think it's supposed to be like 90 degrees, and I couldn't be more excited, honestly. It's much improved from Cleveland or Minnesota, where it was freezing.
It wasn't that cold in Cleveland last year.
Too cold for my liking.
Fair enough. Plans? I mean, you're getting in Wednesday. Games aren't until Friday. What do we got going on?
Yeah, honestly, I was supposed to get in Wednesday night, but they canceled my original flight. So now I just
you're just chilling, taking in.
Yeah, chilling and taking in the sun. But then obviously all the pressers and stuff on Thursday, and games start Friday.
I'm not gonna lie, largely underwhelmed by a lot of the games this weekend. Like I don't think it's a great look when you have half of the Sweet 16, Elite 8 seemingly like they're struggling to crack 50. The biggest drama was arguably off the court with the transfer portal, which I don't want to start with because it's annoying that last night happened, I think, at the timing of it. But we'll start with the weekend. I want to start in Birmingham, too, because it's been a weird last 3 games for South Carolina. I don't think they played even a B-minus game. And yet, here they are, 5th straight Final Four.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important this time of year, right? Like, yes, you want to be playing your best ball. Yes, you want to be playing your A game, but like ultimately you want to go to the Final Four when they're still there. So survive in advance, like absolutely what you want this time of year. But at the same time, I feel like for South Carolina, you got to figure out how to crack that this weekend if you want to win a national championship, because while that might work against Duke and it might work against Maryland, it's probably not going to work against Texas and whoever you would face in a national championship game. So I think that's maybe a little pause for concern for the Gamecocks. After the Indiana game, which was not an A+ game for South Carolina by any measure, you're just like, okay, whatever, it's one game, move on. But now it's a pattern because now you've played a B game or a C game, whatever you want to call it, against Maryland, and now against Duke. So now it's 3 in a row.
Yeah, I know Dawn Staley complained about the region. If they were in any other region, I don't think they'd be here.
Right. I think they're lucky they're in the region they were. Because I agree. I think if they had to play another set of teams, I don't know that they'd be in the Final Four right now.
But that's not how it worked.
Right.
They beat the teams in front of them, and they're off the Final Four again. And the positive from South Carolina is maybe, sure, there was 10, 15, 20 fewer points than normal, but everyone at like different game, different person. How do you game plan? Chloe Kitts was great in the SEC tournament. She was the region's most outstanding player. Just kind of steady. Eddie, she's been the one constant. Sanaya Fagan was really good on Sunday. Full Wiley saved the day against Maryland. I thought Raven Johnson, the box score, may not show it. I thought she was really good in the second half on Sunday. So, I mean, we're still talking about a South Carolina team that's really hard to game plan for, even if they're not playing what we attribute to South Carolina basketball, where they're just kind of a bulldozer.
Yeah, exactly. There's just an element of surprise with this team because you don't know who's going to step up for them on any given night. So it's really hard to game plan. Like, who are you focusing your defensive pressure on when it really could be any of those players that's going to go off? And I do think that gives them an advantage, and just that you don't know. So it's harder to come up with the game plan that's going to stop South Carolina, because that looks a little different every game.
Obviously, when you're down to 4, you have to win 2 games. Either any of these 4 teams can win 2 more games. South Carolina, I feel like, has more variance than anyone else. I think they're going to they're going to play Texas for the 4th time. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows for both sides what that matchup is going to look like. If they won it all, certainly wouldn't be shocked. If they finally got a little too close to the fire and finally got burned, I wouldn't be surprised given the way they're playing. Because at this point, like, all right, 1 game against Indiana, fine. Now that carried over for a full weekend, you got away with it. You're not going to get away with it, I don't think, in Tampa. Duke had that game. The last 3 minutes of the game was an absolute disaster for Duke. A embarrassing disaster. Shall we relive it? So South Carolina's up 2,
Yes.
50-48. Tahina Paopao with 3 minutes to go misses 2 free throws. Here's what happened over the ensuing 3 minutes. She missed 2 free throws. Reagan Richardson throws up a contested 6-footer over Sanaya Fagan with 21 on the shot clock. Shockingly, didn't go out of bounds, or didn't go in, out of bounds to Duke. Delaney Thomas throws a blind pass stolen by Raven Johnson. They get a stop. They get an 18-foot jump shot with 18 on the shot clock. It was an okay look. Rebound South Carolina. They score. South Carolina's up 4. Now we're under 2 minutes to go. Blind entry feed to no one. Turnover. They get a stop. They get an account of a layup. They're down 2 with a minute to go. They draw an offensive foul on the inbound. I think that offensive foul is BS. Not like the play itself. I think the rule itself is stupid. That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
By Ashland Jackson of taking advantage of what I think is a stupid rule. But here's where it gets like obscenely dumb. They take a timeout and they pull Toby Fournier down 2 with 30 seconds left.
That was sorry to interrupt your recap.
Go
that was
ahead.
baffling to me. Like, she had been pretty much their best player all game, and then you pull her in that moment. I just didn't understand that at all.
So it's okay. It's okay. You still have 2 timeouts, and you hold the ball to tie or win the game down by 2. Nothing going offensively. You don't use a timeout. You chuck up a contested air ball with 7 seconds left. Sanaya Fagan had her hand up, didn't even jump. It didn't matter. It was a woefully short air ball. And then South Carolina gets the rebound, calls timeout, and then Duke lined up expecting free throws out of a timeout. Like, that's inexcusable.
Yeah. How do you not know what's happening in that moment?
Eventually, they figure out, the ball's in play. We need to go foul Chloe Kitsch, who makes the 2 free throws. It doesn't matter that they threw the ball away at the ensuing inbound because it doesn't matter. They wouldn't have won anyways. But, like, what a disaster.
Yeah.
What a disaster for the Blue Devils, who, like, they were lucky to even get there because they got a draw that allowed them to not crack 60 and get to the Elite 8.
Right.
I'm sorry, they cracked 60 against whatever 15 seed they beat in the first round. That doesn't count. I got more on Duke. Should we just keep going?
Go for it.
So I had to listen to the third quarter on the radio. Westwood One broadcast, Debbie Antonelli, said something that stuck with me. She said, Duke doesn't go unscripted offensively. Kara Lawson calls every set. Was that a problem? They're getting better every year. They went 56th in scoring offense this year. They were 113th last year, 192nd the year before. So they're better. It's not good enough. Their last 3 tournament games, they didn't crack 60. They only cracked 62 once in the ACC tournament run. Like, if you want to win a national championship, and that's the goal, right? In the last 23 years, all but 4 national champions average less than 75 points a game. Duke's nowhere near 75 points a game. So something's got to change, whether it's you get a coach who can score at, maybe you sacrifice 5 points a game defensively. Like, you need to score more.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's point blank. Like, this team's ceiling is going to be in like an Elite 8 until they can find a way to score the basketball more. Like, you're not going to get to the Final Four. You're not going to win a national championship not cracking 60 points a game. Sometimes not even cracking 50. Like, it's just not a winning recipe at that level.
No, Duke played, I have more on Duke. They played 17 times this year. They played a top 150 scoring defense. Doesn't matter the caliber. They scored 68 points a game. For context, South Carolina scored 72 points a game against top 150 defenses. Narrow that down because obviously Wofford is a top 150 defense. If you narrow it down from, all right, top 150 in scoring D, top 60 in her hoop stats team rating. So basically you're thinking NCAA tournament teams, bubble teams, or better, who have good defenses. Duke scored under 63 points a game. I found this on the web for tournament. Siri's mad at me. My Siri went off thinking, sorry, Siri, I'm on a rant. When Duke plays a team that's NCAA tournament caliber and has a top 150 defense, they score under 63 points a game. South Carolina, for context, scores 68 points a game. You think those 5 points don't matter? Guess what you lost by?
Yeah, they certainly do.
So now it could be worse. You could be North Carolina. That was what we all expected, right? Like the least surprising thing was that it wasn't, I guess the most surprising thing, whatever. It was, Friday was bad. Yeah. It was bad.
Yeah. I can't say I was all that disappointed that was the game that was in the middle of the workday on Friday and I couldn't really pay attention to.
No, we had a coworker who his last day was Friday. So we went to a brewery nearby, just say goodbye. And the game was on. Like, there are people making jokes. Like, that's the kind of game that's bad for women's basketball.
Yes.
That makes people laugh at the sport.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
this is a Sweet 16 game, a standalone game on national TV, and people are making jokes because the teams are a combined 20 of 41 on layups. And I get the defenses are good. Scoring points shouldn't be this hard.
Right. No. Yeah.
Like, North Carolina's worse than Duke. Their points per game against top 150 defenses, they average 64 points a game. If you narrow that down to take that plus the top 60 her hoop stats rating, 57 points a game against teams that have a semblance of a defense and are good.
Yeah.
It's been years of the same thing. So if you want to change it, change it. Because clearly your ceiling is the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight.
Right.
And if that's your ceiling, that's a fine. 300 teams would take that ceiling.
Right.
But eventually, hey, I'm sure they have higher aspirations than the Sweet 16.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maryland, I don't know what to make of Maryland. Like, how do you rate their season? So many new faces. They lost Bree McDaniel. It seemed like they lost their way. They looked really good at times. They looked not so good at times. Like, they're down at halftime to Norfolk State. They had a wild comeback against Alabama, and there they were right there with a stone throw from the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I honestly think it's a really good season for Maryland. I mean, we talked about a team last year that at times was like, oh, is this team going to make the tournament? They bring in all these new pieces. They were really good, like you said, to start the season, and then I think the Bree McDaniel injury really hurt them. But they win the big game against Alabama. We're right in it with South Carolina. Like, I think a Sweet 16 is a good year for this program, especially considering how the season went.
I agree. Now they lose Sellers, they lose Christina Dulce, they lose Alec Kubek, who I thought was really, really good in the NCAA tournament. They lose Amari DeBerry, Kayleen Schmeichel, Bree McDaniel, Saylor Pothenbarger. That's a nice base. A couple of top 100 recruits. I assume they'll hit the portal. Everyone is going to hit the portal, but that's a nice base for Maryland too. Shocking under Brenda Freese, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
Any other takeaways from Birmingham 2? I know we didn't really hit on South Carolina. Elijah Full-Wiley was like really good in the third quarter against the Terps. But anything else from Birmingham 2 that we missed? And so, my blood pressure comes down.
No, I think that covers it.
Birmingham 3. All right, we'll go last night. Texas. It was weird right at halftime. It's like they dominated the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And you look up and say, oh, they're only up 2. Things are probably looking good for TCU, and then eventually, like, that overwhelming the defense, the turnovers, all of that eventually kind of took hold, and Texas won, not like comfortably, but it also wasn't dramatic in the final minute.
Yeah, I thought, like, obviously the defense for Texas is what's going to get the attention here, and it just put TCU all out of sorts. But I thought their offense really stepped up when it needed to, and I think that was what was important for Texas. Like, their offense is nothing to write home about, but at the end of the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, when they needed to get baskets to create that separation, they did, and I thought that was positive to see, because I think you didn't see that in the first half, and that's why, despite the fact that TCU probably played the worst possible half of basketball that it could have played, they were only down 2 at the break. But then, Madison Booker, Roy Harmon, others were just able to get enough going in that second half for them to like you said, not comfortably, but comfortably enough get the win.
I thought the first quarter especially was the best Harmon has looked offensively, maybe all year. She looked aggressive. She looked confident with the ball. Obviously, her defense is just, it's always there. Last night it was at its ferocious, tenacious best. But it's been a weird year for her, it seems, offensively. Like, it's just not as electric, and maybe it's the knee, maybe it's just the way Texas plays, whatever it is. Hasn't always been there. She looked really good in the first, and then the second half, Booker looked like Booker. And how about Kyla Oldacre? How about the coast to coast from Kyla Oldacre?
Yeah, she was really good for Texas, and I feel like we've seen her be really good in general in this tournament and in other moments this season too. I think when she plays a good game, like, this Texas team is a lot better when she's on.
How about the freshmen, Preston and Lee, especially the Sweet 16, especially? But Lee had a couple, hit a 3 last night. Lee hit all their 3s in the Sweet 16. Freshmen that were highly ranked coming in. Didn't do a whole lot, barely even played in the SEC tournament. And now they're carrying them through a Sweet 16 win.
Yeah. I think that's just impressive to see for a player that's a freshman that hasn't been there before to be able to step up in that kind of moment is just huge.
For TCU, obviously, if they lead the country in made 3s, therefore you have to make more than 2 more 3s than Texas does in order to win. That's just, miserable night offensively. it's going to happen against Texas. 27% field goals, 21 turnovers. You're not going to win like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the best year in program history. They're 34-4. Give me your overall thoughts on TCU's season, their program. They're obviously losing a lot going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great season, right? Like, no one thought this team was going to a Final Four the preseason. I think no one probably would have put them in the Elite Eight in the preseason. It was like, yeah, they've got some talent, but like, you didn't really know how it was all going to come together. So I think for them, I mean, you win a Big 12 regular season championship, you win a Big 12 tournament title, you make it to an Elite Eight. Like, that's a really solid season, especially considering where they came from. A team that missed the tournament last year, was holding open tryouts for players last year because they didn't have enough to field a team basically with injuries. So just a huge step forward. Obviously, you're now losing Haley Van Lith, you're losing Sedona Prince, so you're kind of got to rebuild next year. But I think, especially the way that I think Haley Van Lith has looked like the old Haley Van Lith this season and has really had such a turnaround from where she was at LSU, like, is a great advertisement for people to go to TCU.
How about just the overall, like, Haley Van Lith had a great college career. 5 years, 5 Elite Eights, 3 different schools, went to a Final Four. Very interesting career arc, just not in a bad or a negative way at all. Just it was fascinating to watch her over the course of 5 years. She bursts onto the scene at Louisville. She kind of makes a shock transfer to LSU. It doesn't work. It all comes together this year. And, she made a national impact on the game that, not more people are doing now in the social media world, but like she's been a star for 5 years. She's a big loss for at the college level.
Yeah, I think she's just been a name that's been such a big part of the college game. Even when she struggled at LSU last year, like, you still had Haley Van Lith, like, that was still.
They also went to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, exactly. Struggled, and they went to the Elite Eight. It's a different level of struggling. So yeah, I think it's just she's been such a part of this college picture for so long now, and it's interesting to kind of think about, like, the fact that she's just not part of it anymore, which is obviously what's naturally supposed to happen. But it's just like when these players have been here for 5 years, it feels like a big loss.
The biggest compliment I can give TCU is, like, they're being branded as this giant underdog story, and like I get it from a program standpoint. Mm-hmm. Let's not act like there's a bunch of nobodies. The biggest, and this is a compliment to TCU. Right. Mark Campbell got the green light from his athletic department, from boosters, from his NIL collective, whoever, to dump a ton of resources and money into TCU women's basketball. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Like, sure. They bought players. Cool. It's legal.
Yeah.
Do it.
You can do that now.
That's something a vast majority of schools, that's a lesson they could follow. And most schools choose not to.
Yeah.
Regardless of level. They deserve a lot of credit for that. And obviously with that, Mark Campbell deserves credit for making it all come together and turning that into 34 wins. Easier said than done. But let's not act like this is a bunch of nobodies who came out of nowhere. And then thankfully, we don't have to just dance around the fact that there's a 6'7" reason in the middle that this isn't some fun-filled story.
Yeah.
Congrats on your 4 points last night in your 7 years of college. And ESPN labeled you with personal issues for the WNBA draft. If you have Google or TikTok, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's all I'm saying. Google and TikTok exist. Great year. Good luck.
Yeah.
Now TCU has to replace 4 starters. It will be much easier to root for the Frogs next year.
Yeah, that has been a damper because it's very easy to root for the Haley Van Lith redemption arc, and it was very difficult to root for TCU.
Yeah, and like, the program has never been here, and
yeah,
and now it's not an issue. They did eliminate Notre Dame, that was a weird game. Notre Dame did everything in that game to win, except the thing that matters the most, putting the orange ball into the orange cylinder. 3 of 15 from deep. They had 25 more shots. They had a 15-5 edge in turnovers, 21-5 points off turnovers. Didn't matter. TCU controlled the pace. TCU eliminates Notre Dame, and it's hard to look at this year as anything but a massive disappointment for the Irish, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think even like the last month, right? Like, you look at the season was going really well for them. They had the couple losses in November going into like late February, and that was it. Like, you were like, this team looked really good. They looked like could win a national title, and then they lose that game to NC State, which I still think nothing of, but then it's the 2 games after that, and then it just like never came back together down the stretch at all, which is rather shocking. and perhaps more interesting given the portal news yesterday. But
yeah. I mean, you're going into February. It's like Hidalgo and Miles seem to work. Sonia Citron's the best number 3 option probably in America. They hit a home run in the portal with Leah Tu King, who was great in the Sweet 16. And yet here we are. They shared the ACC regular season. They didn't win the ACC tournament. And there's a 4th straight Sweet 16 exit. Last year, that exit was a success given the injuries. They were a 2 seed. And you're thinking, great, the future is so bright. All of a sudden, like obviously they're going to be good. They have Hannah Hidalgo coming back next year. That puts you in the conversation of your top 20 team almost regardless of what else. Olivia Miles is gone. Not the way we expected, but she's gone. Citron's gone. King's gone. Maddie Westbelt's gone. Liza Carlin was disappointing this year. She's gone. Kylie Watson, I think she was hurt, gone. It's Hidalgo. It's Kate Koval. It's Kassan Prosper. And KK Bransford's back from injury. They have a freshman, a 5-star coming in. They're going to have to hit the portal really hard because otherwise next year is going to be, I think, a significant step down.
Yeah, I agree. I just felt like this felt like with the roster that they had, like this was the year that Notre Dame was supposed to go back to the Final Four. Like that was what was supposed to happen for this team, and that's not at all what's happened here. And yeah, I don't see like unless they get some huge pickups in the portal, like that's probably not going to be worth the expectation for this team next year.
No, I mean, and Hidalgo will have to change the narrative. She's a 2-time first-team All-American. She's great. Fair or unfair, she was 3 of 19 a year after going 4 of 17 in the Sweet 16. It's unfair to judge someone off of 2 games. Social media world. If she even gets to the Sweet 16 next year, that's going to be the storyline going in. Is she's great, 30 games a year. In the 2 biggest games of her life, she is 7 of 36 in a couple of losses. So that's just a narrative that's going to be hanging around. What do you think of the Miles? Like, take me through when you saw Shames's tweet about Miles.
I saw it.
Well, 4th quarter, like everyone else.
Yeah, 4th quarter of Texas TCU. Like, honestly, you don't really remember what happened in the 4th quarter of that game because I was very distracted. It's just surprising. I think not knowing what she's looking for. Like, I think everyone pretty much assumed that either like she was most likely going to go to the draft, or if she didn't go to the draft, she'd go back to Notre Dame. So I think it was pretty shocking to see that her name was in the transfer portal. I don't know. I think it's not to make drama out of nothing, but like interesting given how much Notre Dame fell apart down the stretch. Like, and then she's in the portal. You wonder what was going on in that locker room. But at the same time, I'm just interested to see where she lands because obviously she's going to be a season-changing piece for wherever she goes.
Skim Milky says TCU's the front runner.
I did see that.
Yeah. Honestly, the timing of it, like, it's obviously shocking. I didn't expect her to go into the portal. This couldn't have been released today or tomorrow or Thursday. Like, the timing of it really bothers me.
I think they should just not open the portal until the tournament's over.
It's not even that. It's like the portal. I understand why the portal's open because 350 teams seasons are done, and like their players are leaving. Yeah, coaches are moving to and fro. You got to get going. Yeah, and sure, it's a disadvantage to the top teams that have every other advantage in the world.
That's fair.
So they can get over it. Just it's the 4th quarter of an Elite 8 game. Yeah. We can't wait. Especially, it's the Elite 8 game that you weren't playing in because your team couldn't hit water if it fell out of a boat. Second time, like Selection Sunday, there was a massive WNBA trade, which that's different. It's not the same. Yeah. It's the W, so they don't have to bow down to college. Olivia Miles doesn't have to bow down to anyone. Yeah. This could have waited because it took away from the 4th quarter of a fairly close Elite 8 game and then pretty much dominated the second Elite 8 game. Right. And took away from the players who are still playing. Because their teams are better, because they made shots and won. Yeah. Other team that exited from the second weekend was Tennessee. Freshman probably won Texas this game. Pretty simple. Tennessee did everything but make enough shots. They took 8 more. They won the rebounding battle against Texas. That's hard to do. They went 5 of 26 from 3, and Texas went 3 of 7. And just like TCU, if you're Tennessee, you got to make more than 2 threes. Yeah. Or 2 more threes than Texas does.
Exactly. I do think, though, like, great season overall for Tennessee. Like, I mean, first season with Kim Caldwell, I think she's exceeded expectations. It was a hire that a lot of people, myself included, like, raised their eyes at when they saw it. And she came in, she brought her own style and just stuck with it. And, like, they've been very successful. They made it to a Sweet 16 they had a good season. Like, this is a great start for a new era there.
It's weird. Like on paper, there's not a whole lot of growth, right? They went from a 6 seed to a 5 seed,
Yeah.
a second round to the Sweet 16. They went from the SEC semis to playing on day one, and they were bounced in the second round. But like, it feels like night and day. Like the life injected into the program makes it seem so drastically different than. I think it just got a little stale under Kelly Harper. Like that, they obviously weren't bad.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it was just stale.
Yeah, so, it felt like under Kelly Harper, like that was just going to keep being it, right? Like it was just going to keep being, you might get to the Sweet 16, you're going to be a 5 or 6 seed, you're going to be wherever you are in the SEC, where I think this feels like, okay, this is year one, you can grow from there.
And I mean, the experiment worked. You have the number 2 recruiting class in the country coming in. You have 5 top 60 recruits. Talasia Cooper, Ruby Whitehorn, and Z Spearman are a trio you can build around. Where they need to improve, they need better shooters. They attempted the most threes in the country. They made the second most. They were 116th in three-point percentage. It was very much quantity over quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then the defense. It's unique. It's going to wreak havoc. 70 points per game allowed is way too many.
Yeah.
Only 2 champions this century have allowed even 65 points a game. Maryland in 06 and the Eureka year with Notre Dame. So they need to improve defensively and get 3-point shooters and then watch out. Because I don't know how you're going to. I mean, you can beat Tennessee. They're going to be awfully hard to beat if they go in and get a couple of shooters and figure out how to just not even become great defensively, just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
Tweak it a little bit. So that is the right side of the bracket. That is game 1 Friday, South Carolina, Texas. Left side, start UCLA, LSU. Saw the depth of UCLA on display. I mean, Betts didn't play in the second quarter. Kiki Rice was quiet. Hello, Gardner and Jaquez.
Mm-hmm.
And they're off to the Final Four first time ever.
I think for UCLA, they just have so many different pieces that can get you on any given night. And I think that's what's been really important for them. Like you said, like Betts, even sitting in the second quarter of the game, like Betts is going to be pretty much automatic. Like Betts is going to get hers in all of these games, but they need someone other than Lauren Betts at this stage in the tournament, and they've continued to get that. And like you said, it was Jaquez and Gardner against LSU, but it's other players, other nights. They just have, I think, a wealth of options that can deliver that.
Actually, I really liked LSU's game plan. They contained Betts and Rice. Betts, 17 points, but 7 of 14, 7 rebounds, 6 blocks, 5 turnovers. Yes, that is, as you alluded to, that's containing her. Yeah. Rice was 1 of 7. So in one regard, if you're Kim Mulkey and the staff, like I think you can live losing that way.
Yeah.
You have to give up something, right? So you say, all right, we're going to slow down Betts and Rice. And if Jaquez or Gardner or Jones or whoever beats us, I can sleep at night. And then Jaquez and Gardner hit 9 threes. Hat tip. Congratulations. I think where you have trouble sleeping is that second quarter, right? Betts didn't play and you got outscored 22-12. And that's where your troubles lie. Where it's like, we had them and we didn't take advantage. Like the game plan played out exactly how we wanted it to, and it didn't work. That's, I think, where LSU's bothered.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I felt that way watching that game too. I just felt like for LSU, like if you didn't take advantage with Betts not on the floor, like they were going to have an uphill battle in the second half when she was back out there. And that's exactly what happened. You just had to take advantage of not having their best player on the floor for all of 10 minutes pretty much.
Interesting spot for LSU. They'll be fine. Like they have Michaela Williams. They have the number 1 recruiting class. We're waiting. We're waiting.
She has to decide today, so we should know.
Anissa Morrow is obviously gone. Samaya Smith entered the portal yesterday. Yes. That was surprising. Shout out Anissa Morrow. She's the closest thing we've seen to Courtney Paris since Courtney Paris, whether it was at DePaul, LSU. From the second she stepped on the floor in Chicago in 2021, say walking double-double, who had put up numbers at, like, again, we haven't seen really the combined scoring and rebounding since Paris.
Yeah, she's just, you always knew what you were going to get from Morrow. She's delivered it in basically every single game of her college career, like you said, since she got to DePaul and all the way through her 2 years at LSU. So she's just been consistent, double-double pretty much every game, like you said. So just a great college career for her.
And she and the now departed Samaya Smith won them the NC State game. They were plus 16 on the glass. They were 42-22 in the paint, 22-11 second chance points. She had, 30-something and 15. I mean, I admittedly, I completely forgot. NC State and LSU played in November when we talked last week,
Same.
like blanked from my memory.
Totally
It was on
forgot
Flow
about that.
Sports. That's like half the reason why.
Yeah.
And some of the numbers played out the same. The difference was, I think the NC State guards were much better. I mean, that was a game right into the fourth quarter. Maddie Cox was really, really good. Probably too good for her own good, given the bonkers three that she took in the last minute. I mean, you can't convince me Morrow wasn't the best player in the SEC this year, and not one of the 5 best players in the country. She had 30 and 19. Finally found it. But NC State, I thought no team improved more from November to March than NC State. Wolfpack of February, March would have beaten the November Wolfpack by 20 points.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Rivers, James, and Hayes. NC State's been a very good program. Those 3 helped change the program, who've been on the precipice like a billion times, and they finally got that breakthrough a year ago.
Yeah, they got to the Final Four last year, and then I think in a year where people thought they might kind of not have the same type of success, they still get to a Sweet 16. You lose to an LSU team. I thought they looked, like you said, in November, it looked like, is this team a top 25 team? What are they going to do this season? And they turned that narrative around all the way to a Sweet 16 and looking, I mean, an ACC, sharing their ACC regular season title, like just an overall very successful season for them, I thought.
And you have Brooks, who went off in the fourth quarter. You have Zam Jones, who went off in the second quarter. You have Tilda Trieger, who really grew over the course of the year as your foundation going into next year. I'm sure they're going to hit the portal or get, everyone else. We don't know what their roster looks like. But you're looking in South Bend, and you're looking in Durham, and you're looking in Chapel Hill. UNC has a highly touted recruiting class coming in, but you're looking around and going, why can't we just keep things at the top of the ACC? Why not? It's gettable. And then the fourth team to come out of there was Ole Miss. The recipe was there to beat UCLA. They crashed the offensive glass. They didn't commit turnovers. They forced some. The difference in this game, UCLA had Lauren Betts, and Ole Miss didn't.
Yeah, that's the difference for UCLA in a lot of games.
Yes, but I thought it was an excellent year for Ole Miss. It feels like the final record is actually worse than last year, but the metrics, her hoop stats rankings, the simple rating system on Sports Reference, like they all indicate this year's Rebel team was a lot better than last year's team. I think the eye test showed that. They've already hit the portal hard. They brought in 3 studs already. They had 7 players leave who didn't play much. But like Ole Miss, this is a program that, like they 2 years ago, kind of a surprise Sweet 16. Last year, fringes top 25. This year, inside the top 25, top 20 most of the year. They're continuing to grow. I don't think they're going anywhere.
Yeah, I think they've gotten a little bit better every year. We talked about they get the LSU win at the end of the regular season this year, and it was like this team needs to get one of those signature wins, and they got it. So it just, a step forward every year. And I agree with you. I think Coach Yo has been able to do a really good job in the portal year in and year out. They're going to keep doing that, and I think every year they're going to get a little better.
And they're trying to get some scores. Caitlin Peterson averaged 21 a game at UCF last year. She committed yesterday. Latasha Lattimore at Virginia, who's been at 17 different schools, averaged 14 a game in Charlottesville. And then they got a pretty good freshman from Wichita State, Jayla Murray, led the team in scoring and rebounding. Yeah, I mean, that's Ole Miss's thing, right? They're going to hit the portal hard every year. And that's the case. So that leaves us Spokane 4. Not the game we all wanted, not the game that was hyped from the second the bracket came out. That is what it is. I came away wildly impressed. We'll talk about UConn obviously in a second. That USC 1 got there with the win over K-State, and 2, they're down 19 in the third quarter, and you're thinking, let's keep this under 30.
Yeah.
And instead, I mean, they had the Huskies scared.
Yeah, they fought. Like you said, easily could have, like the 19 easily could have rolled into 30, and that could have been the end of that. But they fought back in that third quarter. I think it was 5 points at the end of the third, and UConn was definitely sweating going into that fourth quarter. I just think like so much heart from this USC team, because I think probably a lot of teams thought, or a lot of people thought, like when Juju went down, like they'd go out in the Sweet 16, and instead they fought through the end of the Elite Eight.
There are no bright spots here for the injury. If you're looking for anything, if you're Lindsay Gottlieb to hang your hat on, the way that Kennedy Smith, Avery Howell, and Kaylee Heckel, especially the first 2, played against K-State, and I know Kennedy Smith didn't shoot the ball well last night. I weep for the people that Kennedy Smith guards for the next 3 years. She is so good defensively. It's insane for a freshman.
Yeah, no, I think you won't see it in her box score, but her defense is just It's so impressive, like you said, especially for a freshman, but just in general, I think she's one of the best defenders already in college basketball at the guard position. And we're going to see the 3 more years of that. So, like you said, obviously no bright spots from this injury at all, but the way those 3 played, like this team's going to be good next year without Juju. And then all those players are going to grow up, and when Juju comes back, this team is going to be so good.
Yeah, it's one thing to play like that when you're a freshman, but you have that safety blanket. Like, okay, Juju's here. Like, I can afford a screw up, or I can be a little tentative because we have Juju. Like, Smith took it personally in that first quarter against K-State. Avery Howell was 4 of 8 from 3 against K-State. Smith came out and held Bueckers in check for the first half. I think that the stat was up when Smith was guarding Bueckers, she had 2 field goals, and everyone else did. She had 7 attempts or whatever it was. Yeah. Obviously, it's one of the great what ifs for USC. Like, what if? Look at the other side of the bracket. Like, you're telling me USC couldn't win it all?
Yeah.
That's going to haunt them. But that's not how it worked out. I don't think Juju obviously not going to play, if at all, next year, the vast majority of next year. USC is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, they're maybe not top 5 good. They're certainly top 16 good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think they have enough talent that they're still going to be very, very good next year.
Rhea Marshall, I mean, shout out. She had an underrated career because she was there when the team was 12-16. That was her freshman year, Gottlieb's first year. And she only got better. And boy, was she good last night.
Yeah.
Overall.
A player that did a lot for, I think, her draft stock in one game last night, but just she had a fantastic game against UConn. I'm forgetting the final numbers. Was it
23 and 15?
15, yeah. Just was able to just really use her size against UConn, especially against the smaller lineup, and just dominate them in the post.
However, USC, for the second straight year, their season ends in the Elite Eight at the hands of Connecticut. We'll talk about Paige in a second. Sarah Strong really looked like a freshman against Oklahoma. Not so much last night.
Yeah. And I feel like it deserves a caveat because we say Sarah Strong really looked like a freshman, and she did, but she still had a double-double against the best rebounding team in the country. So it wasn't all bad. But then, against USC last night, I mean, the first quarter was just all Sarah Strong, and I think that was intentional from Gino to get her going. But it's not just that she can beat you in the post or she can hit the threes. It's just a combination of all of it. She scored all of those points in different ways.
I mean, she had that spin move in the first half around Iriafen.
Yeah.
That's not an 18-year-old's post move.
Yeah, no.
And then second Husky ever with 600 points as a freshman. Maya Moore is the other one. She's pretty good.
Pretty good company to be in.
You know who else is pretty good? Paige Bueckers, who is on a heater that we can talk about. UConn has all the good players, blah, blah, blah. Paige is doing something that we've literally never seen at UConn, of just take over every game, score 30, and it's like a woman possessed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, what were your takeaways from obviously last night, and then the 40 burger she put on, which the last 10 of those seemed just kind of like icing on the cake. But I mean, it's the continuation of selfish Paige is carrying this team to heights.
I'm going to start with the Oklahoma game because I thought that one was maybe more impactful. I mean, she was obviously very good last night, but in the Oklahoma game, right, UConn's down 4 at the half. They were struggling in that first half of the game. And I feel like Paige just came out in that third quarter and was like, well, my season will not be ending today. And she scored pretty much at will. I think it was crazy. It was and I think the craziest part about it was none of them were really easy looks. They were deep threes, off balance jumpers, contested shots. And she's still just you're just oh, of course that went down, because when she gets on that level, you just it feels like it's automatic. Yeah, like you said, the last 10 in the fourth quarter was just I don't think they really needed them, and just they kept going in. But I think it was just very fun. Maybe not fun, I guess, if you were a Kansas State fan or Oklahoma fan. But
I don't think Tyler DeLuca had fun.
Yeah. But fun to watch her just do that, because I mean, the fact that Paige has never scored 40 in her career is actually kind of surprising, given how good she's been, and how much she's been for the UConn offense. But she just completely took over the second half of that game.
Game state has a lot to do with it. The 22 Elite Eight is still tops in my book. How she just willed that team in double overtime on 1.5 legs.
Yeah.
This was obviously right there with her best over performance. Tournament record for UConn. Carrie Bascom had 39 in UConn's first ever tournament win over Toledo. And I mean, it's kind of fitting because right now, Carrie Bascom is the best Husky to never win a title.
Yeah.
Paige is a loss away from taking that unfortunate crown. And we'll talk about whether they can in a bit. Fitting that Oklahoma went out in a blaze of turnover glory. 23 overall, that underlies it. It was 21 in the first 3 quarters. The game was over in the fourth. I mean, they were in the game. They led at halftime. They probably should have led by more, but turnovers.
Yeah.
Said it all year. It got better at the end of the year, and then it just came crashing down in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, and I think this was a hard matchup for them in terms of that because like UConn is a team that has forced a lot of turnovers this season and has proven that their defense can be very disruptive. And you pair that with an Oklahoma team that has just struggled that all season long. It just came crashing down.
I still obviously the future is very bright. Skylar Van's a foundational type loss, even if she had a down year statistically, but she's just been a rock for Jenny Baranczyk for pretty much her whole tenure. She's gone, as does Peyton Verhulst, Liz Scott, Lexi Keys. But you're building around Reagan Beers. You're building around Sahara Williams. Zaya Van will slide in seamlessly as the new point guard starting. She was great late in the year. And got the number 1 recruit in the country, Leah Chavez. Oklahoma is not going to – I don't think they're going to take a step down. If anything, they're trying to figure out how to not quite take that next step up.
Yeah, I think a team probably trying to get one more piece in the portal to really make the difference. But they agreed, I think. They're not going anywhere.
And K-State, very good year. I know they lost to a shorthanded USC team. Serena Zadell might have been my favorite non-All-American player to watch this year. I mean, she can play on my team anytime, a gamer. They lose a ton. Sundell's gone. Aoka Lee's finally out of eligibility. Tamara Poindexter's gone. Jalen Glenn, who was great in the tournament, they're all gone. So your top 4 scorers have graduated. I think they take a step back next year, but I think it's going to be a 1-year blip. They have a top 10 recruiting class coming in. And that was before they added a 4-star who flipped from Auburn to K-State. So I don't think K-State will be quite as good next year, but looking like long-term, I think they're fine.
Yeah, agreed. I think bringing in a top recruiting class right now is a good start to start rebuilding. And like you said, a bunch of freshmen, you're probably going to take a step back this year, but you keep building on that. Maybe you get someone in the portal. Like there's an upward trajectory still there for them.
All right. You got to be out of here in 15, right?
I've got another half hour.
We got a half hour. Great.
Yeah.
So I was going to skip this. Thoughts on a lot of talking point coming in, going into the weekend. Gino ripped the 2-site region again. Mulkey and Vic Schaefer both agreed with him. I don't fully agree with basically Gino saying the 2-site region, whoever thought of it, ruined the sport of basketball. I think it's a bit hyperbolic. Even I have some issues with the geography of things, but overall, I saw the crowds the opening weekends. It gets more people there in theory because attendance outside of the Final Four and a select few. I saw the attendance. There's a reason they moved to the 2-region site, right? The attendance was dipping, unless the region was in Greenville or Bridgeport or Albany. So I get it. The coaches don't have to like it. I get why we're not moving away from it for a couple of years.
Yeah, I do think we've seen the rise of more teams that have larger fan bases in the last few years. So I do wonder if you went back to a 4 regional, I think you need to be strategic about where those 4 regionals are. And then obviously some other teams might have some issues with that, but that you could not fill 4 stadiums, but you could get good attendance at 4 stadiums. I think the logistics part though is hard from to have all those teams in one arena. When you've got the Sweet 16, you're trying to fit in 4 teams practices, 4 teams shoot arounds, and 2 games in
right
one
now,
day.
4 becomes 8.
Yeah. And it's very, when it becomes 8, it's very difficult, I think, to execute on that in a way that doesn't involve people practicing at very odd hours, which is, I think, part of Gino's complaint.
Which, yes, that's a very team-specific problem, and that's his job to care about the preparation of his team. It's the NCAA's job to figure out how do we get butts in seats, which I'd be curious. I'm sure the NCAA has the data of all electronic and digital. How many South Carolina fans also bought tickets to the UCLA or to the Texas TCU game? What does that crossover look like? Because if it's very distinct, then great, maybe we can move back to 4. If it's, Joe Schmo from Columbia, South Carolina bought tickets to all 8 games, and that happens 5,000 times. Well, we can't take 5,000 seats away.
Right.
What I will say. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
They do have to do a better job, I think, of regionals versus Final Fours, which they can't do until 2029. So if you're going to send teams across the country, like UConn's not going home.
No.
They're going right from Spokane to Tampa. NC State, LSU would have been in the same boat. LSU's obviously closer to Tampa, home base, but like ultimately, you can do a better job of like, do we need to be in the Pacific Northwest 3 straight years? And now, if UConn or LSU or NC State like wants to not be in Spokane, win more games, sure, go to Birmingham. But I think they just can do a better job. I think Rebecca Lobo talked about this think about it more. But I think it's going to get better. Like there's a reason they used to be in Albany and Bridgeport. Sure, butts would be in seats. Frankly, there weren't any bidders to host these regions. Now there are bidders. We're going to Philly. We're going to DC. We're going to Vegas. We're going to Fort Worth all in the future years. Not for Final Fours, for regional weekends. The question I'm curious with, if you want to go back to 4, you better show up. Because I don't want to hear, you can't get to Philly. I can't get to DC. I can't get to Dallas, Fort Worth, and I can't get to Vegas. If no one shows up, we're never getting 4. Ever.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do think like if they're going to stick to the 2, they need to think about where they're placing them with relation to the Final Four. Because even like a UCLA that got to play, like stay on the West Coast, like you're now still have to travel as far as basically humanly possible in the continental U.S. to go to a Final Four. And I do think that just puts the teams that are in Spokane at a disadvantage. And like it puts UCLA, your number 1 overall seed, at a disadvantage because despite the fact that like they were closer to Spokane, like Spokane isn't like in UCLA's backyard. So they still had to go to Spokane and now they've got to fly all the way across the country to play on Friday.
No, I mean, flying from Atlanta to, I don't know, Maine, Boston isn't, it's not a jaunt to your backyard. And that's basically the equivalent of what UCLA is doing. So yeah, I just think there could be just better puzzle putting together. But at the end of the day, like, hey, Spokane bid on it. Spokane's going to get it.
Yeah.
I understand. And now at least we're at a place where, hey, the bids they seem to be more competitive. I'm going to assume if Philly applied, then all due respect to Albany, they're going to pick Philly. So yeah,
I would much rather go to Philly than Albany. No,
yes,
Albany.
So the sites improve. Now we just need people to back it up. And if you have packed houses, all right, let's talk about moving back to 4, assuming that the want from like you need 4 cities to play ball. And it seems like that's continuing to grow and be the case. All right, enough talking about planes. They're all taking a plane to Tampa. Game 1, Friday, round 4. South Carolina, Texas. Gamecocks won 2 of 3. They split the regular season. Gamecocks ran away in the SEC championship. Give me your thoughts on what we've seen 3 times already. And, 4th. I mean, we've seen teams play 4 times. I don't think it hasn't been UConn, Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, like you said, we've seen this matchup 3 times already. I think for Texas, it comes down to a lot of what they did against TCU, right? Like your defense is going to be good, but can you get enough on the offensive end to win the game? Because the defense can't do it alone. So I think you need to see more of what we saw from Laurie Harmon in the first quarter against TCU, more of just Oldacre down the stretch. The things that they did well last night to win that game, they need to repeat against South Carolina. And then if you're South Carolina, I think you need to find a way to shake out of whatever these last couple games are because they haven't scored the basketball well. They haven't looked the part necessarily, but you're back in the Final Four. So like now there's just 2 games left, but you got to look the part, I think.
South Carolina can get away again, not looking like they can't play as poorly as they did. But even if they played better, Texas can make it seem like you're not playing any better.
Yeah.
But if you told me South Carolina won this game 54-50, just like Sunday, like that is I believe that a heck of a lot more than if you told me they won it 82-70, 78.
Right. Absolutely. I'd be if it's 82-78, I will be absolutely shocked.
Harmon, I looked because I'm with you. If she plays like she did yesterday, that's a difference maker. She had 14 against South Carolina. And I mean, I was there and I have no recollection of Rory Harmon having that kind of impact on the game. Like, it didn't feel like she had 14 points. And maybe that's just the game state South Carolina ran away with it in the second quarter. So it kind of just never really felt like Texas was in it. A fourth chance for Madison Booker. She's been brutally bad. 26% shooting in 3 games against South Carolina. 14 of 54 overall. Bree Hall and Tessa Johnson have had her in hell. Can she find her way to scrape out of it? And then the bigs, Kyla Oldacre and Taylor Jones, were decent in the first 2 games. Texas just missed everything known to mankind in game 1. Oldacre was great in game 2 to the point where Dawn Staley couldn't play Chloe Kitts and Joyce Edwards because she said they couldn't stop Kyla Oldacre. And then they stopped Oldacre in the SEC final, just 2 points. So I think, how do Texas's bigs play? If they play really, really well, Texas has a shot. If they don't play really well, I can't see them outscoring South Carolina.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think, like you said, like South Carolina just has more weapons that can score the basketball, and I don't know which one it's going to be that's going to make the difference for them in this game, but Texas has to step up and have those players deliver in order to score enough to keep up.
When's the last time? Again, I don't count first round NCAA tournament games particularly. The last time Texas scored 70 outside of the William and Mary game, you have to go to the SEC quarters against Ole Miss. They scored 70. So 56 LSU, 45 in the loss to South Carolina, 65 Illinois, 67 Tennessee, 58 TCU. Again, I don't think you have to hit 70 in this game.
No.
I think
60.
you got to hit 70 if they were to win and make it to Sunday.
60, you mean?
I think they might need to make 70.
Oh, you think 70?
Not necessarily Friday, but if they were to win Friday and get to Sunday,
Sunday,
60 is not going to do it.
Yeah, agreed. I think 60 could do it against South Carolina. Yeah, 60 is not going to do it, regardless of who you're going to play on Sunday.
And the options are game 2. Pray to God we tip around 9:30 and not closer to 10 on Friday. UCLA and UConn. I want to figure out. So UConn gave up 23 and 15 to Ray Marshall. So part of me is going, well, Ray Marshall is not as good as Lauren Betts, so that's a problem. But the other part of me is like, well, they gave up 23 and 15 to a big and won. So I don't really know what to take from the idea of UConn going up against Lauren Betts.
Yeah, and I think the thing that, like, they gave that up to Ray Marshall, but they really made Kiki Iriafen really ineffective in that game. Yeah, non-factor, quite frankly, in the game. And that a lot of credit for that goes to Sarah Strong. So part of me too is like, I think Kiki could beat you single-handedly. I don't think they thought Ray Marshall could beat you single-handedly, and there was clearly a focus of who you were trying to contain in the post, because they know they have a shortcoming there, right? Like, they're just a smaller team, and you're going to put Ice Brady and Janelle Alfie out there, but UConn's better when they put the smaller lineup out there.
Have they even played together this year? It can't be much. And it can't be in any minutes that respectively matter.
No.
But at the same time, like USC plays Marshall and Iriafen 35 minutes together.
Right.
Betts and Barker don't play that often together, I don't think.
So you mostly are gonna have one big out there that you've got to contain. And then I do think, though, like, even if maybe you just let Betts get what Betts gets, but if you can slow down everyone else, is that enough to win?
UCLA shot the ball really well this tournament. They're 42% from deep, 34 makes in 4 games. They haven't been sub 40% from deep since the Big Ten quarterfinals. So, like, that's a sneaky thing, that because Betts has been so dominant. She had back-to-back 30-point games on 99 of 100 shooting. So that's been the story. But like, they're really, really, really hard to contain if you have that plus consistent shooting. It doesn't have to be the same player, just consistently someone on UCLA is making threes every game. And that makes that's what worries me for UConn, is that obviously they're not going to win points in the paint. They have to make enough threes. They don't need like 13, but they can't have a percentage in the 20s, and they have to beat UCLA in that category.
Right.
And with the way UCLA is playing, that's hard to do.
Right. And then on the flip side, I think for UConn, right, you've got like Paige Bueckers and Sarah Strong are just both playing at such a high level right now. So UCLA has to find a way to make sure that like Lauren Betts plus whoever is stepping up for them on the 3-point line is enough to outscore those two. I think that's the flip side of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can talk about X's and O's all you want. It may come down to Paige Bueckers and Lauren Betts are right now the two best players in the country.
Right.
The way they're playing. Who's better?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're vastly different.
Exactly.
One's a guard, one's a forward.
But who's better on Friday night is probably the difference maker.
Right. Who carries your team to a national title game appearance?
Yeah.
Famous last words. Congratulations to South Carolina and Texas for what I'm about to say. I think the winner of this game, whoever it is, wins it all.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, hey, good news for the Gamecocks and Longhorns. I just gave UConn and UCLA the kiss of death.
But yeah, I mean, it does have that feeling, right? Like, I think if you've watched this tournament, the two teams that have looked the best so far are UCLA and UConn. It does have that feeling of like, this is like whoever wins this game will win the championship.
All right, so we have 4 scenarios. Let's run through them. We've seen 2 of them. We can skip those for last. So if Texas wins, so we haven't seen UCLA, Texas. We haven't seen UConn, Texas. We'll start UCLA, Texas. Why not? They're the 1 seeds. It is funny that in the men's tournament, it's 4 1 seeds. In the women's tournament, it's 3 1 seeds. And those plucky underdogs from Stores, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And
that are probably going to be favored to win on Friday anyway.
Yes. So if it's UCLA, Texas, I think like Texas's defensive pressure versus UCLA's offense, like that's honestly of all, we know what UCLA, South Carolina could look like. We've seen UConn play South Carolina. My most exciting like perspective matchup, just because we haven't seen it yet this year. Like, what does that offense look like against that defense?
Yeah, they're 2 totally different styles of play, and I think it would be fascinating to kind of see what they match up for. Like, I mean, I think in that matchup, it comes down to you're still UCLA going to have Lauren Betts is going to be the best player on the floor, but she's going to have more resistance in the post with Oldacre and Taylor Jones than maybe she's seen in most, if not all, games this season. I feel like this one though, like if you get it, like we talked about how Tennessee didn't make enough threes, TCU didn't make enough threes. Like UCLA has to make more than 2 more threes than Texas does to win that game. But I think that's what that comes down to.
Yes, that's a good point. I hadn't written that down, but that's a good point. Texas can take away what you're good at defensively, pretty much anywhere, inside, outside. If Oldacre from the 4th quarter and that second South Carolina game shows up, basically copy paste what I said 10 minutes ago for them against South Carolina. If she does that, they got a heck of a chance. Because you don't have to outproduce Lauren Betts. If you can just contain, like LSU did, 17 points on 50% shooting with 5 turnovers and only 7 rebounds, you're not going to do any better. Yeah, short of Betts getting into massive foul trouble. She got in foul trouble, it didn't matter. Or God forbid getting hurt. Like that's what she's going to do. Right. What else can you do? So we haven't seen that. We haven't seen UConn play Texas, where the big question is, can Texas score enough? Because they could hold UConn in the 60s. I'd be a little surprised, frankly, if they didn't. That doesn't mean they'll get in the 60s.
Right.
Harmon gets Paige. AZ didn't play well. So if you got to think, like, Kennedy Smith's a really good defender, and she's long and athletic, and Harmon is different. She's small, she's ferocious, she's in your face 94 feet. In this game, I think AZ Fudd, I mean, she can't go 1 of 10 or 2 of 11, whatever it was. I think that's kind of the key here, because Paige might get slowed down a little bit, or just be more willing to pass.
Yeah.
For UConn, who guards Madison Booker?
Yeah, I think that's tough, and it's probably Paige. Like I don't know, because you've got to leave Sarah Strong in the post. Like if you're gonna have, you can't put her out on her. So it's probably Paige. And that's just there's not a good matchup for UConn and Madison Booker, quite frankly.
No, I mean, if my fear with that for UConn would be Booker loves to attack the rim.
Yeah.
Obviously, Paige Bueckers can't get in foul trouble for UConn. You wonder if maybe they go small and KK Arnold comes off the bench and
just because she's
Ashlyn Shade, all heart, all hustle, just go out there and you got 5 fouls. See what you got. That one would probably interest me more than maybe I indicated a few minutes ago, just because that's a mismatch. Yeah, they're very different teams, so there's not like a clear 1-to-1 matchup in any way. And then we've seen if South Carolina makes it, UCLA, South Carolina game was a 15-point outcome. It wasn't that close. It was 21 points at the half. In that game, Betch only had 11. She did have 14 rebounds, but they didn't need her. I think your difference there is in that game, Chloe Kitts and Sanaya Fagan had 6 points combined. They played 25 minutes combined. They've played very, very well since that game. obviously they need to continue that. If they play like that again, it'll be the same outcome.
Yeah. I think that's the difference maker there is what can South Carolina's bigs do against Lauren Betts, and Lauren Betts is going to be better than she was in that first game too. So, but I think that's the key there. Is like your bigs have to hold their own against Betts
and
to win that. Yeah.
Just like the LSU game plan, if you do all that and London Jones goes 5 of 5 from 3 again, tip your cap.
Right.
Congratulations, better team won. Like you can live with that. If you lose because London Jones or Tamia Gardner or whomever goes off from 3 and you followed every other part of the game plan because you got to give something up. And then UConn, South Carolina, Huskies were plus 19 on the glass in that blowout in Columbia. Forget about everything else. Like it starts and ends there.
Yeah.
Tack on 13 made threes. South Carolina, I can't even, it happened and I can't wrap my head around plus 19 on the glass, UConn over South Carolina. Yeah. I can't possibly imagine that happens again.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I mean, there's other things that need to go right too in that game, but I think that's the key for South Carolina. If you're gonna beat UConn, you can't let them do that. You can't let them get all those second chance opportunities. You can't let them limit you to only the first chance opportunities. And UConn did a great job of that in Columbia. That can't happen again.
I'm going to assume AZ Fudd won't go 11 of 22 with 6 of 10 from 3. Obviously, that would help. I'm not going to assume he replicates that. But Ashton Shade made 3 threes. I don't think she scored last night. Caitlin Chen was really good last night.
Yes.
All these little pieces, like we talk about South Carolina's depth. For once, UConn has some depth. Right. And it seems every game it can be someone different. Like South Dakota State. I know the box score didn't show it. KK Arnold changed the game. Caitlin Chen was really good last night. Aubrey Griffin didn't play for the NCAA tournament, came in, changed the game in the fourth quarter. All these little pieces for UConn, I think, have to be the difference for South Carolina. Because you can say the same. We say the same thing about South Carolina. You're going to get someone. UConn just has to get someone, and it can't just be the Paige and Sarah Strong show.
Yeah.
Who's quietly been kind of meh for the Gamecocks? Tahina Paopao.
Yeah, she hasn't had a big game, it feels like, yet, which doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Probably just coming.
No, she hasn't really had one all year. Her last double-digit scoring game was the regular season finale. Can she make some shots? She's 4 of 20 from deep in her last 6 games. If she can get going now, especially early on, she's not like South Carolina. You're rarely built to have a 30-point scorer. When she scores, she comes out and hits 2 threes in the first quarter. She might finish with 9 points, but her hitting an early 3, I think, gives South Carolina just such a confidence boost that I think they could use that on Friday or Sunday or whenever. End of the day, who you got?
I think I'm gonna go UConn. I think the level that over South Carolina. I don't think Texas is quite going to have enough to beat South Carolina. So I think it's going to be UConn over South Carolina. But I just think the level that Paige Bueckers is playing at right now, I don't know that she's losing another game.
I picked UCLA over South Carolina at the start of it. So
stick with it.
Right. Can't change it now. That's just, that's cheating. That's hedging. Because I can say I was right either way. So no, UCLA over South Carolina. That's that. All right, we'll finish. You mentioned I don't like talking about the portal this time of year. Yeah. It's a fact of the matter. And breaking news, someone that averaged 2 points a game is in the portal. I don't care. However, that's not the case of the 1,100 players. There's a couple that stand out. Obviously, we talked about Olivia Miles, Cody McMahon.
Yeah. I feel like that one hasn't really gotten that much attention. It was announced and then no one really talked about it, but that's a huge name in there as well.
Yes. Unique player, that combination of size, the quickness, the athleticism, the ability to go inside out. She's kind of not too dissimilar from Sarah Strong, not quite as true inside presence, but there aren't many Cody McMahons.
Right. Yeah. Just
physically lying around out there. And how about Tanaya Latson?
Yeah.
That one. So we're not insiders. We don't know a whole lot. I do know some people who, I've asked, and basically it's no guarantee she doesn't go back to Florida State. I don't know what her WNBA prospects look like. Go get paid. See what's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, someone, whether it's Florida State, whoever is going to get, there's no better pure scorer out there on the market.
Exactly.
Any thoughts on Gianna Neekins? That was interesting. Yarden Garzone went in yesterday. Nell Fortner retired, so Danny Carnegie and Tony Morgan. I guess Carnegie entered before the retirement. I'm sure she knew. That probably played a factor, but there's some big names out there open for business.
Yeah, I just think we're going to see a lot like last year where we're going to come out of the Final Four and you're going to think that these are your top teams next year, and then the landscape's going to change a lot because there's enough names in there that are going to make a big enough of an impact that, especially if multiple of them land at the same place, like we saw this year with like a TCU or like just in general, like there are names in the portal right now that change the trajectory of a team next year.
And the coaching carousel is alive again. Nell Fortner retired from Georgia Tech. Great career, a couple of Coach of the Year honors between Purdue and Auburn. She revitalized a Georgia Tech program that was just kind of treading water, had them back in the tournament this year, had them ranked the last couple of years. Really, her biggest success came with Team USA. She has more wins with Team USA as head coach than anyone, which surprised me.
I did not know that. That's pretty cool, though.
Won an Olympic gold in Sydney. So, I mean, just kind of an underrated career. Like, she didn't win 900 games. She didn't win, I don't think she won 500 games, but a very, partially because she spent time with the W and with Team USA, but just very good career for Nell Fortner.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Doug Bruno stepped down for DePaul. He didn't coach this year because of health problems. It's a shame that he didn't kind of get to go out on his terms. Won nearly 800 games, been associated with Chicago basketball for 50 years. Yeah, so a couple of big names have stepped down. Megan, 7 a.m. flight? Direct?
7 a.m. direct. That's why we're taking the 7 a.m. Otherwise, the joys of flying from Hartford, I could have flown to Puerto Rico to fly back to Tampa.
Sounds like a Frontier flight.
JetBlue, but
okay. Well, I know you're not a morning person, but you enjoy that 90-degree weather. If you're for programming notes, we'll do our normal thing next Tuesday. Press break comes out this weekend. I am not able to go to the Final Four this year. There will be content of some sort from her hoop stats, whether it's Megan, whether it's the press break gang, whether it's Calvin Wetzel's there, whether there's enough people there. You're getting some sort of content this weekend. So check out her hoop stats on YouTube, subscribe, check out the podcast feed here. There's stuff coming. And of course, we'll be back next week to talk about whoever wins the national championship in Tampa. So Megan, enjoy Tampa. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good.